A report by the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has been extensively covered by major left-wing media outlets, the report claims that 1 in 5 adults in the United States have had a family member who was killed by a gun. I think that's something we got to look over. Headline, The Federalist, quote, that Kaiser gun study the media love is garbage. The United States has a population of 333 million, with around 259 million of them over the age of 18. If 20% of these adults had a family member killed by a gun, as the report suggests, that would amount to nearly 52 million people. However, there are only 40,000 gun-related deaths in 2022, with around 20,000 being homicides. This discrepancy implies that each victim of gun violence had hundreds or even thousands of family members, according to Kaiser's polling. Several other issues plague Kaiser's finding, such as the small sample size of 1,271 people answering ambiguously defined questions on a highly emotional and politically charged issue. Despite these flaws, the mainstream media coverage of the report seems to lack any skepticism. All right, let me bring in the author of the piece, senior editor at The Federalist, and author of the article. Well, yes, I just said that. David Harsanyi, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how does Kaiser come up with something that's so obviously absurd? 1 in 5?
Well, how they do it is I sort of took a deep dive into the questions themselves. And what they do is they ask you if you have or know of any family member who was killed by a gun. But it's an open-ended question meant to inflate the number. For instance, if my grandfather was shot in Vietnam and killed, is that a murder? Is my second cousin, being shot a murder? Is my brother-in-law's second cousin being shot, a murder? So, it's just an open-ended question. It gives no time limitations. It gives no family limitations. So obviously, people, it's just not a scientific number, even though not a single establishment media outlet went in, and took a look at those numbers and reported them correctly.
That's where I was going to go. So let's say your family may have come here from Honduras, right? Do you have a family member that was killed by a gun? In a country plagued with gang violence? Sure, right? Your family may have immigrated here from an African nation that had some kind of ethnic cleansing. You ever have a family member killed by a gun? Sure. So having a family member killed by a gun and having a family member killed by a gun here in the United States are two totally different things.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of those examples. Yeah, I mean, I think if you really wanted to figure this out, you would say within the last 10 years, do you know an immediate family member who was, threatened, killed, whatever, by firearms? And that would give us a better understanding. Now, obviously, the first thing you look for in one of these, pseudoscientific polling studies is, do they conflate suicides and homicides? If they do that, that they're just trying to inflate numbers. And it's not that suicides aren't important, and it's not that suicides, many suicides aren't undertaken with a gun. It's that the underlying problems for criminality and for suicides are completely different. One is a mental health problem, and one almost always is a criminality problem. So you have to divide that, or the number doesn't matter. It doesn't tell you anything.
And what about shootings by law enforcement? I mean, if it's just a gun, right? What if you had a cousin that was a bank robber and got shot by a cop or a security guard?
Or accidents too. There aren't that many of them as people think that lead to death, but they happen as well, and it's part of that number.
It seems like this is a game we play with immigration and COVID and everything else. There's a difference between dying from COVID and dying with COVID. When you talk about immigration, you can't refer to legal immigrants in the same breath as illegal immigrants. So when you're talking about illegally purchased guns versus legally purchased guns, this all scary assault weapon. I mean, you take a look at the nightly body count in Chicago. This is mostly gang violence. Gun laws aren't going to prevent gang violence.
Well, it reminds me of you remind me of another number that's always skewed on purpose. They repeat this endlessly, that the number one killer of children is guns. Well, yeah, if you count children to 19 or 25, as some of these people do. Now, if you're 18 or 19, There are a lot of criminals are 18 and 19. A lot of gun deaths are 18 and 19-year-olds. Those are not children anymore. So they, and they purposely skip the first year also, where many numbers of children die if they do die at all. So yeah, these numbers are not meant to shed light on the debate, to help us deal with a problem. They're meant for consumption by media to scare people, and that they achieve their goals because every outlet basically goes with it.
But how do we combat this? CNN and MSNBC are not going to put David Harsanyi on their programs to sort of chip away at this. They're going to put people on, people from Kaiser perhaps, and anti-gun activists. They're going to put David Hogg on, or whoever, maybe Alyssa Milano. They're not going to put anyone on who can intellectually sort of peel this back and go, okay, the number's a lot lower when you start to examine it, and it's ludicrous on the surface. Like you said, these people have to have thousands of family members. And again, as we talked about, die in combat, die in gang violence, having family, your grandfather might have been shot in, Nazi Germany. I mean, it's absolutely absurd to just say the gun when it might not have anything to do with guns legally purchased here in the United States.
Yeah, because they don't want the debate. The funny thing is, before Trump, BT, I would be on CNN occasionally, right? Or I would be on MSNBC occasionally, and I would debate someone. That never happens anymore. There's just, everyone's in a silo. I mean, this is a bigger issue, but everyone's in a silo, and there's no real debate. I think that most of these gun folks don't want to debate. They use emotionalist arguments. Those are the most effective, probably, and they just don't want to debate. And that's why they don't want this. That's why you have Kaiser, which is, they lose respectability. We can't even trust experts anymore because they're constantly, conflating things and pumping up numbers for political reasons. And it's a big problem for this country. I don't have any answers on how to help that. I just write my little column and hope that people read it. But obviously, I don't have the reach that these people have.
Let me tell you something. You want to talk about the last time you were on CNN? The last time I was on CNN or HLN, the lineup included Larry King, Campbell Brown, Joy Behar. Okay, so when I think about how long it's been, and Lou Dobbs, I was there on Lou Dobbs. Can you imagine Lou Dobbs on CNN now? That you're right, they don't. And if they do bring a conservative on, it's almost kind of an insult. It's almost kind of, you must think I'm weak and unintellectual if you're bringing me on this program.
Right. Yeah. They gang up on you, and they think they can push you around, which is the so-called conservatives on these shows are either people who are not really conservative anymore. I mean, or they're, basically they're liberal, or they're people they think that can be pushed around. And they listen, I don't think that's healthy for the country, but I don't really, when I was growing up, I loved Crossfire. Like, Crossfire was my favorite show. It was just this vigorous debate by smart people all the time. And there is no show like that. I don't even know you can have one, because people, basically the winner is the one who smears the other one more, right? So there's really no way to even get into these debates.
When it comes, look, I'm willing to debate. And when someone says, well, what do you conservatives want to do? Well, what do you mean? The whole idea of do something, right? After Nashville, they said do something. Do what, though? Because I'm not giving up the Second Amendment. I'm not going to shred the Constitution. We already have background checks. We already have layers and mechanisms to listen to some of these people. They think you could just walk in and go, give me one of those AR-15s, and out the door you go. That's not how it works. We have federal background checks. But when you're talking about gun violence, which is another thing they make up, again, they conflate the handful of, yes, completely tragic mass shootings. No conservatives like, who cares? That was only 3 Christian kids and a couple of staffers. We, of course, look at it as tragic, but we're not going to do something just to do it. 30 seconds.
Yeah, a perfect example of that's what's going on in Tennessee right now. They want to pass a red flag law that is completely unconstitutional, breaks the Second, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendments of the Constitution, no due process. So, yeah, that's why they don't want to debate. The argument for that the governor made there is completely emotional, and it has nothing to do with that shooting, and it would not stop any kind of mass shooting.
Yeah, and again, the show with the bullhorn and the coffin and bringing out celebrities, we're not going to do something just to do it. If it makes sense, I'm with you.